Hey, I think I just got the alert. We are live on Facebook. Welcome to the show. I am Brian, set the base triathlon.com, and we're going to do some quick Monday tips. We're going to be talking about, you can see it on the screen. Hopefully you can see it on there. Ironman transitions. So they're a little bit different than your typical transitions. Had a lot of questions. People step up to the 70.3 in the full Ironman distance. What is the difference? What am I looking at? How is this totally going to be different? Asking shall receive. Here are the answers to all your burning questions. If you don't get your questions answered, put them in the comments. Give me a like if I covered everything. Put in the comments if I missed something. Put in the comments if you think I should do something better or whatever. Hopefully, you keep the distractions on the screen for a minimum, my pop-ups. So with that, we're going to jump in there. So Ironman transitions, a little bit different. Sometimes the same as your local Olympic sprint distance, USCT Nationals, just did those a few weeks ago. Could be similar, could be different. So let's go through them. There may be multiple transitions. Now, this may happen in some of your races as well, but a lot of the times you're looking at a T1 and a T2, and they're in different locations, and sometimes they could be spread way far apart. So it's for a spectator problem, from getting one to the other, you're going to have to find transportation. So just be aware of that. The transition is not always in the same spot, so it may require, usually they try to get everything as one drop-off point, but you may have to go to different transition areas. So if you try to go someplace and you don't want to rent a car, try to do Uber everywhere, you might run into a little bit of a problem. So just be aware of that. Make sure you know where transitions are at. Excuse me. Sometimes you're going to have to either walk a mile to a mile and a half, or get shuttles to the swim start. So just be aware of that. If you've done Escape from Alcatraz this past weekend, so if you do that, you have to take a bus out to the swim start and they ferry you out to the swim. But in some races, Ironman races, Tulsa, we had to walk about a mile to the swim start. 70.3 Des Moines, we had to walk 3/4 of a mile to the swim start. It's nothing huge or anything. I'm not going to make you walk 5 miles, maybe a mile and a half. Just be ready for that. You may have to do a little bit of a hike to get to the swim start from your transition area once you get set up. The next point is 70.3. Usually you're setting up at the rack. So it's kind of like your typical triathlons. You set up your gear at the rack. Everything's there. You do your bike setup, your T1 setup, your T2 setup. It's right there at the rack by your front tires on the ground. And you put your gear bag there and you're ready to go. So it's really not too different once you get to a 70.3 level than your typical race. Just if you have multiple transitions, then it becomes a little bit more of a logistics issue to figure out where everything goes. Full Ironman uses gear bags. Typically, even if we're going to get into a little bit later with pandemic and COVID and safe return to sport situations, they don't have changing tents and they're trying to reduce touch points. So you actually put your gear bag at your transition spot by the rack, but you're still using the gear bags. You've got your transition bag, your swim to bike, your bike to run, your special needs for the run on the bike, and you get your morning gear bag and stuff like that. So full Ironman, and I've posted several videos of that, uses the gear bags for the setup. So just be aware of that. So you go to the check-in, you'll get those individual gear bags. Plenty of videos out there you can learn about the gear bag setup for full Ironman races. Usually a full Ironman race has changing tents. Now with the pandemic, they have done away with those. So you're at the transition spots and you're open to the public, no nudity people. But you can go to a porta potty if you want to do a full change or anything like that. Some people put towels around them. So just remember, no full nudity in transition. And right now, the changing tents have kind of been on pause, just depending on how things go and move forward and progress goes. They could bring the changing tents back. Or right now, you're just going to be out there open in transition. So usually a full Ironman race has changing tents for guys and gals. You do full change. Doesn't matter. You're covered from the public and you're at the same gender in the changing tents. But right now, not quite the same situation. Number 6, some races have a combo of gear bags and transition. Like I said, Ironman Tulsa, to reduce touch points, they had gear bags and you put them at your transition rack. Now, you didn't set up your transition. You just left it all in the bag. So when you got there, you had to open your bag, so don't tie it in big, huge knots that you can't get open when you're there. When you're in a hurry, you dropped off your bike, you want to get on the run. If you're in a hurry, you don't want to be there trying to get your bag open, so don't tie it in a huge knot. But it was utilizing in the morning. We did set up at the transition spots from the swim to the bike. So that one is a little bit different. You probably could have set up just a little bit. I think they more than likely like you to have your stuff still in your bag. So I think I organized everything just so I could pull it out of the bag, especially when it was raining. I didn't want to have my bag sitting out there or have my stuff sitting out and getting all wet and soaked. It was wet and soaked because it was raining for 112 miles. But just be aware that it may be a combination. It's all usually in the athlete guides, so make sure you're paying attention to those. And I do my videos and I try to read through the athlete guides to find out what's going on. So things are kind of changing and they're kind of fluid. So make sure read the athlete guide to find out if they're using a combination of bags or you're setting up a transition or whatever you're doing. So number 7, bigger races, bigger transition areas. I mean, when you got 3,000, 3,500 people and bikes in there in the racks, and especially if they're trying to do a little bit of social distancing in there, transition areas are going to be huge. So that's going to run into, you're going to have a long run from one end to the other. It could be a half-mile transition from when you come into the swim exit and you go out the bike out exit. So just be aware, transitions can be rather large, especially if you're running through barefoot. You just got to be careful with rocks and everything like that. But transition areas, they're going to get bigger as the races get bigger. So just be aware of that. So number 8, full Ironmans have volunteers helping. So usually in the changing tents, you have volunteers helping you open bags, that kind of stuff. Reducing touch points for pandemic situations. They'll have volunteers kind of run around. So if you had trouble with your bag or something like that, there might be somebody there to kind of help you open or something like that. But for the most part, kind of reduced volunteer count to begin with. So fewer volunteers running around to help you. So you need to be a little bit more self-sufficient. Typically, full Ironman races have a lot of volunteers running around, especially transition areas, just helping you out. And aid stations, those are fully supplied, fully stocked, fully full of volunteers, and they're there and they're trying to help you get to your race and do whatever you want. So with the full Ironman races and the 70.3 races, there are a lot of volunteers running around helping. So you shouldn't have a problem finding someone to help you out that is allowed to help you. You cannot get outside help, but you can have help from volunteers. So remember that little nugget. Number 9. Some have bike catchers. So some Ironman races, usually the fulls, not very much the 70.3. Sometimes the full Ironman races, you come off your bike and you hand it to a volunteer and they take it to the rack for you. Now with reduced touch points, you're racking your own bike. It's not the end of the world. You shouldn't have a problem with that. But some races, they'll be in the athlete guide, they'll be in the athlete briefing. So make sure you listen to that to find out if you got bike catchers, and so then you don't have to run your bike to the rack. So it reduces a little bit of time in transition, but with COVID, with pandemic, with reducing touch points, it might not be available at this point in time. Number 10, bike check-in the day before a race. So typically, USAT Nationals a little bit similar. We had to check in our bikes the day before the race, so they had to sit there overnight. And both nights, my bike got rained on. It got rained on in Tulsa. It got rained on in 70.3 Des Moines, and kind of locked up my pedals onto my bike, and I had to take it to the bike shop to get the pedals off. So be aware of that. So make sure you're checking your pedals and all your screws and everything, and make sure they're not getting kind of rusted or seized in place, because your bike needs to sit there the night before unless you've got super special circumstances that you've worked out with the race before. 70.3s and full Ironman races, you've got to check your bike in the day before, and it has to stay there overnight, and then you'll be allowed to get to it the race day. So just be aware of that for 70.3s and full Ironman races. You're checking in your bike the day before a race. Number 11, you may or may not allow bags in transition. So USAT Nationals is very interesting because I kind of spaced this out. I might have been aware of it, but didn't really pay attention too close. We could set up our transition areas, but they were not allowing gear bags to be set in the transition area. I'd imagine to reduce the clutter and everything so people weren't tripping over stuff and making a mess and whatever. So they had a tent where we got a bag, and then you put whatever you want in this plastic clear bag, and they wrote your number on it, and then you check that in. So it's a little bit different, but I brought a big transition bag and still was able to condense it down after I took my stuff out and gave it to them for morning check-in. So make sure you read athlete guide and everything. Make sure that you can leave your transition bag in transition, or if you have to take it out and leave it with somebody or do something else with it. So make sure you're paying attention to that. Number 12, collecting gear bags and have a plan. So with Ironman races and 70.3s, if they have multiple transition areas, they have a plan to have everything at the finish line area. So like Ironman Tulsa is 2 transition race. Des Moines 70.3 was a little bit different. They had a morning start, but we didn't get a morning bag. So transition was all in one spot, so it all ended up there to begin with. I'm trying to think of a few other races where that might be. Indian Wells 70.3 had multiple transitions, multiple start areas, all this kind of fun stuff. They have a plan to get your morning gear bag, your T1, your T2, any other bags, except you do not get your special needs bags back. They get all that stuff at the finish line area, And Tulsa was nice. They brought it all and just put it in the T2 area right by your bike. So your bags were all cinched up, put right there. All your stuff was there. Right after you're done with the race, you go pick it all up and you're out of there. So pay attention to that. Find out where the gear bags and everything is going to be collected. You're not going to have to go out and go to all these different places to pick it up. Ironman 70.3 and full Ironman races have it planned out so you get all your gear bags back. It's one spot at the end of the race. And usually it's in walking distance of the finish line area. Number 13, rack spot is by bib number, so you don't have to sweat getting that perfect rack spot when you get there to the race. Get in there super early. I reckon getting there early anyway, but your rack number is assigned. Some races I've been to, local ones, they assign you to a rack and you just pick a spot in the rack. 70.3 and full Ironman races, they put your bib numbers on the rack, and that's where you rack it. Your bike faces the way that you're looking. If you're looking at the sticker, you can read the sticker, your front wheel is pointing towards you. So make sure that you're rotating your bike. The other races there, make sure you're putting in the right spot, but you're racking by bib number and it's already pre-assigned, so you don't have to worry about that. Number 14, check for wristband match the bike stickers. So when you're getting your bike from transition after the race, make sure you keep your wristband off. Don't peel it off, because if you do, and you can't prove that the number on your bike matches the number of athlete you are, it's going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt to try to get your bike out of there. So that's one nice thing is and my local racers are starting to do this too. I mean, bikes are getting so expensive these days that it just behooves them to make sure that the person taking the bike matches the person that owns the bike. So just be aware, they're always checking the numbers of the athletes and the bikes. Number 15, final one. I know this is kind of a little bit long. Some allow shoes clipped in the bike, some don't. If you've seen, some athletes like to clip their shoes in the bike, so when they hit the mountain line, they just jump on, and then when they're riding along, they slide their feet in the shoes, and then they strap them up, and they get going. Some races will allow this, and some won't. There's reasons. If you're grabbing your bike from the rack and your shoes are on the bike, they can get caught on the pavement, it can trip you, do all kinds of other things, or if they're tight on space, they don't want shoes clipped in there and causing a mess and everything. So athlete guides will spell it out. If not, ask an athlete briefing or ask the race, the Facebook pages or anything like that. They're very particular. Some allow them and some don't. So make sure you know which one your race does. And with that, that is the end of my quick little tips. Hopefully this helps you out. A little bit of the differences and nuances between Ironman and 70.3 Ironman races and transition areas compared to your local races maybe and smaller races you might do. Hopefully I hit all the points. If I do, give me a like. It's going to be on YouTube later, so give it a like there. Give me a subscription. If you think I missed something, put them in the comments. I come back and I'll make transitions number 2 if I get enough comments and enough things that I missed. So if you find anything in there that I should have added, put them in the comments. If you got any questions, put them in the comments. If you think I can improve, put them in the comments. I need to talk faster, put it in the comments. I need to talk slower, put it in the comments. But anyway, like it, subscribe, comment, do all the fun stuff. Hopefully this helps you out. And with that, happy training out there, and we'll see you out on race day. Later.